I'm Julie Cairnes, and I'm a Life Mastery and Conscious Creation Coach. I'd like to welcome you to the Inner Peace Masterclass, and today I have with me the wonderful Dawn Petalino. Dawn is a transformational life coach, and she helps women in transitions move past overwhelm and uncertainty into a freer life of confidence, clarity, and joy. So you also do Reconnective Healing and are a Reconnection practitioner and a speaker and an author. And your business name is The New Rays of Life, spelled R-A-I-S-E, which I love. I just want to welcome you today, Dawn. Thank you so much for coming to our Inner Peace Masterclass.
Oh, thank you, Julie. I'm really grateful to be here.
Thank you. And I'd like to, I think, start with asking you a bit about the journey to where you are now, but where it all started for you, because many people who work in very alternative modalities have been through some kind of very difficult life journey to bring them to this point of truth for themselves of how they needed to proceed forward. So I just wonder if you could share some of that with us.
Oh, yes. I think that our journeys actually just kind of validate for a lot of people what we go through. Well, I don't think I'm much different in the way that it was a crisis that kind of brought me to this space. I mentioned on my website that I grew up through generations of alcoholism. And so I also learned from a very early age. And I was one of those independent kids. And I was like a go-getter and a go-getter and a overachiever. And by the time I was 25, I thought I had everything that I wanted, that, I thought I had this picture of what life would look like for me in a way that would make me happy. I had the marriage, I was married to a man I loved. We live on 2.5 acres in this beautiful home. I was teaching at an elementary school. I was making decent money for a teacher. I had a good savings. I had, friends and family close by. I was healthy and fit and all of that. And I had this picture going on. And in my quieter moments, I would hear this voice that would say, "Is this all there is?" And I didn't want to hear that voice. I didn't want to hear that voice because I wanted to keep the picture of what the world told me was going to keep me safe and make me happy. And I really believed it. I thought, well, if I have all these pieces, it will keep me safe. But the problem was, even though things looked really great on the outside, on the inside, my mind was constantly going, telling me the things that I needed to do or take care of. Because at that time, growing up in the environment of just generations of alcoholism, it was really about control. It was really about controlling things in my life so nothing bad would happen, making sure certain things I wanted I got, making sure certain things I had wouldn't leave. And with that brought a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, concern, overwhelm, stress. I had an eating disorder. I was like a busyholic. I wanted to cover over that voice that said, "Is this all there is?" And so I did. I covered it over with food. I covered it over with alcohol, covered it over with busyness, covered it over with work, relationships, all of that. And then in 2005, a miracle happened, which didn't seem like much of a miracle at the time, but my marriage started to fall apart. And he had gotten relocated at the time to South Carolina. So we ended up moving down there, and I took a teaching position down there. And it was a very difficult year. I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I would go for a run, go to work. I would work until like 6:30. When the janitor left, I would leave. I'd come home to this trailer, to this marriage I didn't know how to be in anymore. And I would work till 11:30 at night, and then I'd go to bed, and I'd wake up and do it all over again. And I cried on my way to work, and I cried on my way home. And at night, I would just lie in bed, and I would say, "I can't believe this is my life." And at that time, I started to get into a book called The Course in Miracles. And I started to, spirituality was something I kind of dabbled with on Saturdays. But at this time, I really delved into it because it felt like everything that I built my life on was falling apart. And I didn't know. I thought, well, wait a minute. If I had all these pieces of what the world told me was going to make my life good and safe, and that's not working, then what is there? What is there? So I kind of went through this existential crisis and studying the Course in Miracles. And at the end of that year, I knew two things. I mean, by then that voice had gotten so loud that I knew I had to leave the marriage and I had to leave the job. And so I did, and I moved to Charlotte, and I did that all in a week, and I didn't do it because I was brave. I just did it because I was in so much pain. And at that time, I wanted to see, could I trust, could I trust this higher power, this source that I was reading about, that if I didn't have a plan for my life, would life have a plan for me? And it was the first time in my life that I wasn't trying to control anything, that I didn't have a plan. And I noticed that the quieter I got, the louder that voice became. And within during that time, I got a message to open my own tutoring business, and I did not know how to do that. But by this time, I knew how to trust, I knew how to listen, and I knew how to follow. So within 3 months, I had a full practice with no website and one advertisement. And then, things were going pretty good for a while. And then about 2009, I kind of hit bottom again because I realized I could only follow that voice as much as my heart was open. And there were still places in my heart that were very closed. So I hit bottom a second time, and I had to learn to go deeper into my emotions. And I had to learn to really be with my emotions in a way that would heal them and move that energy. And when I was able to do that or learn that, then I started to get the message of to be that you're a healer and a transformational coach, which I didn't even know what that was. I was like, a transformational coach? Do I need a certification? What is that? So, but I knew enough to listen. That's what I've been doing. I knew enough to trust it, to listen, and to follow that voice. And within 6 months, I was coaching a few clients. I was teaching a few classes. I had a professional website done for free. And I had appeared on a local cable show twice. And none of it was anything I had planned, because what I learned was life wasn't about planning. Life was about listening to life's plan for me. But I had to learn to get in alignment with that. I had to learn to make peace my priority inside myself. And when I would make peace my priority, it just naturally, since that's like our natural state of being is love. Our natural state of being is peace, is compassion, is harmony. That, as you know, that's our natural makeup. And so when I would get in alignment with that, I would begin to get the inspiration rather than motivation. Motivation is like trying to run on my own power. Inspiration is running on the power of unlimited source, unlimited spirit, and it carries with it just an exponential power in ways I don't even know how it's going to affect the world. But through my own journey, I've learned to really get in touch with that inner voice, and that's what I do with the transitions. Is I help women kind of, when they're in that overwhelm, when they're in that stress, anytime we're there, those are kind of like the softer transitions. But if we're not paying attention to being in a constant place of chronic overwhelm and stress and irritability, if we're not paying attention to that, then life's going to send us those louder transitions of something's going to happen with the health, with the job, with the relationship to get our attention. Because it's always about surrendering back to that life force within us that naturally knows how to navigate our life. But I had to, I was a big controller and worrier, so that was a large part of my journey, was really more and more surrender and really making that peace my priority.
That's interesting. I'm thinking back to the start of your story about growing up in an alcoholic family. And thank you for sharing deeply.
Yeah.
Because I too grew up in an alcoholic family, and I am aware of particular behaviors. You know, after years of therapy myself to stay afloat, I went to Al-Anon. Al-Anon was, you know, for adult children of alcoholics and addicts.
Yes.
And that was fantastic. It's got some very good core practices that take you away from blaming the addict and the alcoholic and coming back to your own behaviors. So you take the focus off them and wanting an apology and that, and come back to yourself and go, this is who I became in that process. What did I become? And as you did I become controlling? Did I become an overachiever? Did I become irritable and anxious? And, you know, all of those other things that go with being an adult child. Did I become hypervigilant? Hypervigilance is huge and often leads to that total, what do you call it? The foundation of an empath. You know, you're born as an empath anyway. It's even stronger.
Exactly.
Exactly. You're on high alert and hiding, or waiting for trouble. So just
exactly.
And, you know, it's really hard to overcome that. And as a practitioner working with people, also letting go of that control and letting them, you know, come to their own healing and, you know, like trusting that people will be okay and that kind of thing if they say they will be. But I'm just, you know, wondering how, you know, you've obviously been through a very deep journey yourself, recovering from growing up in an alcoholic family. I don't know if there was abuse or what happened in there for you, but how did you first of all, I'd just like to ask, what kind of behaviors were you aware of besides controlling? What other things came up for you as an adult child of alcoholic family?
Oh, just, some of them that you mentioned, the perfectionism. Al-Anon was one of the first places I discovered that, there really is, that I'm not crazy, that there's a place that people feel the way I feel, could put into words what I couldn't. I didn't realize, of course, at the time how controlling I was, but so a lot of it was the perfectionism, the sense of the overachiever. You know, there was this idea in my head that what I did was never enough, that I had to, you know, there was always more I could do and should be doing. A lot of shoulds. Definitely a lot of shoulds in my, I would often, self-condemnation was a big one where, you know, I would do that compare and despair thing. So I would just compare my insides of somebody else's outsides and find myself less than. I never wanted people to be too close to me. I did things that would kind of guard myself from really being intimate with other people. And part of it was the perfectionism. Part of it was just never really allowing myself to care too deeply about someone or something. So kind of keeping people at arm's length and not, you know, thinking somehow I wasn't lovable, you know, and that, so in order to get love, I either had to earn it, I had to act a certain way. I certainly became fearful of authority figures. I also people pleased, things that would, you know, I would try to tell people what they needed to do in order to be better and try to take control that way, or get upset with people when they didn't behave the way I wanted them to behave. That, you know, that was always something there. So either I was right or I was wrong, but somebody had to be right or wrong. You know, it wasn't like, oh, you could just exist as you and I could exist as me. And guess what? That's really okay. I didn't know that back then. So I think a lot of it really just was ways I would separate myself. And, you know, that was a big thing with the Course in Miracles and later the Course of Love when I studied those, you know, those books, was really learning what unconditional love was. And it was the meditation. You know, one thing with the women I coach, as well as I hold these free meditation classes at my home every other week. And I put guided meditations in my newsletter as well, because when I learned to meditate, it would naturally it would calm my mind enough. You know, that voice was just so loud, so chattery, that it would calm and relax my mind enough that I could actually begin to hear my heart And it would also relax my nervous system, because as you mentioned, that hypervigilance, that nervous system had so much armoring, so much ready for criticism or ready, you know, I've got to protect myself was the mentality. Yeah. That I only knew how to come from fear. I didn't know how to come from love. And until I experienced unconditional love, which is what the meditation did, it put me into an alignment with that higher self, that higher power, that I say God, source, creator. And I began to experience things that I never experienced. And then, as you mentioned too, you're a highly sensitive person. It's that uncovering, the closer I got, the quieter I got, I began to realize certain talents and abilities that I didn't know I had. And so it was really, you know, the Course in Miracles says there's only two ways of looking at the world, through fear or through love. And fear is my ego, my survival part, you know, and it's never trying to hurt me. It's actually trying to help me, just is doing it in a very backward, old-fashioned way that doesn't work anymore. But to come from love is to come from my heart. And that's why when I hit that bottom the second time, it was, you know, those places I had learned to relax my mind enough, did affirmations, all of that, to begin to at least open up to that there's this loving source rather than something I needed to be afraid of. But I was still closed in my heart of ways that I wasn't willing to receive that love. And I can only receive, I mean, I can only receive from my source if I open my heart enough just to allow it. And I had to learn to really relax and let down my arms and, you know, just really open up to saying, okay. And when I would feel that love, to just allow my nervous system to feel what unconditional love felt like. I think so much of it is, you know, it's retraining that limbic brain, that emotional brain into, oh, wait, we don't have to guard ourselves here. It's safe. It's safe. And that was a big one for me, is that safety factor.
Yes.
You know, it was huge. It was huge.
So interesting. I was reading one of your blogs where you talked about the cortisol addiction, you know, downloading into your body. So, you know, we know that well, that is that fight and flight, but it is an addiction that does take a while to kind of let go of. It's a negative addiction we don't want, but there it is, you know, you're flooding through your body, and it's a horrible feeling. It's really awful.
You get used to it. I mean, that's the other thing. I think that I notice that for myself and others, it's like you don't even notice when you're running on that chronic stress. Yeah. All of a sudden you acclimate to the chronic, and you think that's normal, you know?
Yeah. You know, so I think, and the other thing that comes out, you know, when you go to Al-Anon, I think that's one of the places where you find your voice. You start talking about what's happened, although you may have done it in therapy one-to-one, you're in a group situation. I think that's a really big part of the healing is, and being, you know, considered about what you're going to say, taking it away from the other person, coming back to yourself. But there's so much about women finding our voices again, women and men in Al-Anon. But yeah. I know that's what you're about too, is about helping women find their voice again. So I'm just, I'd love to talk to you about your work, your reconnective healing work. Can you tell us about that, how it works and how you came to it?
Sure, absolutely. Well, you know, I had this, it was actually a thought in my head, you know, and the Course of Love talks about, you know, learning to not think, but receive. So not to think, but receive thoughts. And so in that way, we come from that very open-minded place, like, you know, in Zen Buddhism, like that beginner's mind, that blank mind. And I received this thought in meditation, you know, that I was a healer. And I just said, okay, I don't know how this is going to play out in my life, but if you want me to be a healer, I'll be a healer. So I began just exploring healing modalities. Now, I would say 10 years prior to that, I had taken a Reiki 1, just from a girlfriend and I had done it, and I never used it except on myself, but it did really open up a lot of my energy centers at the time. And so at this point in 2009, however many years later that was, I just started to take different classes looking into different kinds of healings. And at the time, the Reconnective Healing was coming to Charlotte. Now, this was a fairly new, I would say, modality, but so Reconnective Healing was made internationally known by Eric Pearl. He didn't invent it, but he really made it something. He publicized it. He helped people get to know it. And the premise of it is that, you know, we've evolved as a species, we've evolved as a planet enough that these new frequencies, these love frequencies are here to help us evolve, to help open our hearts, to help us become a new species, so to speak, as one that does come from more compassion, bringing that feminine energy back into our planet, into our beings. And so these love frequencies are here to actually help us. And so when I went to take this class, I wasn't going to at first, and a girlfriend of mine said, "Oh, you're taking this, aren't you?" And I was like, okay, I guess. But when I went to take it, I left there thinking, oh, wait, yeah, this is what I do. And then, so this type of healing, what it does is I'm interacting with these frequencies, and I'm attuned to these frequencies. And just like a violin, if I pluck the string on one side of the room with the violin on the other side of the room will begin to resonate at that same tone. So it entrains the other one. And so when I'm vibrating at a certain frequency or these frequencies, then the person I am working on becomes attuned. It's not so much I'm doing anything as I am just kind of allowing these frequencies to move from me into this person's being. And I will tell you, at the time, I really didn't understand what I was doing. I could feel it. I could feel these energies moving from me into this person, but I didn't really understand what it was. And I was praying about it. And I had a woman that came for what's called a reconnection, which I'll share it briefly in a bit. But she came and she said, "Oh, you know, if you heard of the Pleiadians?" And I said, "I'm not really sure what that is." And she said, "Oh, they're light beings." She goes, "Oh, Eric Pearl mentions them in his book and such." And I had heard of Pleiadians, but I never really knew much. And it's just, you know, channeled light beings. And she says, "Oh, I have a book, you know, that, you know, you might be interested in." Well, she came the next day and she said, "I bought this book for you. I was told to give you this book." And it was called Bringers of the Dawn, which is my name. And it had this sunrise on it, which is like my logo that I had received in a meditation to use this logo. And so I began reading this book, and it explained everything about what I was doing with Reconnective Healing. And basically it's telling us that you have 12 chakras. You have the 7 on the inside, the 4 on the outside. And when they are fully open, you access these 12 energies, 12 information centers in the universe. And you begin to know things that you had forgotten that you know. And that what we've done is we've disconnected from our source, and that junk DNA is not really junk DNA. That you actually have 12 strands of DNA, you know, and that they connect to your 12 energy centers, and they go out to these 12 information centers and reconnects you back into the universe, kind of plugs you back into your rightful place. And what I noticed with these is these frequencies infuse into the being, into the person, and they begin to work on your chakras from an internal place long after you've left the table. And so they begin to work inside of you, opening you up, you know, on an unconscious level, any place that you might still be closed. And what I noticed, so whenever I do coaching, my coaching packages, I always start out with a free reconnective healing, because I want to, you know, I think that we can do a lot together, but I think, you know, just having a little celestial help is a good thing. So something beyond ourselves, that something intelligent that is going to open up those pathways. And my clients, they get awarenesses, they get breakthroughs, they seem to grow so much faster than I did, you know? And so the reconnective healing is, it will only move as fast as your nervous system can handle, because otherwise, you know, if we move too fast, either we get too scared and shut down, or we don't really understand what happened, and we don't have a conscious healing of it, you know? So that's what the reconnective healing is. And the reconnection, that was something I felt led to do. And it's a process where it's only done once in your lifetime. It's for soul evolution and for life purpose. And it reconnects you back to your original blueprint. And the book that woman had brought to me began explaining all of this. And I was highlighting everything. But so what that does is, it's like a healing, except you might be going along like this in your healings, and then it kind of moves like this. Yeah. And it'll put you into your path. You know, for some people, that can happen right away. For others, it happens gradually, because again, you can't override the nervous system. There's also divine timing in things. Even though I might say, oh, I'm ready for my purpose, I'm ready now. Maybe not, you know, you might not be really ready. So it's just allowing the process to take place and the growth to take place at its own peaceful pace. Yeah. But it's always assured, because it's happening. It's almost like you gain this assistance from the inside. So that's like, you know, the reconnection, the reconnective healing was something I was very drawn to. And just once I did it, I just knew, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do.
And I think, you know, it's really interesting, people who have really upgraded and uplifted, and like the whole vibration has lifted and ascended in a sense. It's I think the dilemma for all of us that's coming up a lot through this masterclass series is dealing with the kind of duality of the planet we're living on. So we're dealing with, you know, like our energies have lifted, but around us there are some very negative, dark energies. And it's, and also, you know, we still do go through the normal emotions, and you know, like it's all, we're human, right? You know, that stuff still happens, we're still reacting. Right. So it's very much about how we are still kind of, how we are acting now that we've kind of lifted our energy and our lives. And we're in a world that's got some very difficult things going on. How do you, I'm sure you have clients that approach you that who have felt uplifted, but they're still dealing with the duality of the planet. It is a challenge.
Very much. In fact, I just got an email from a woman who was, she just asked me, she says, I would love to find more peace and acceptance. How do I do it when there's so much suffering in the world? Yeah. And I told her, and this is what I find with my clients as well. It's interesting to me, the women that are drawn to me, they end up, the majority of them have grown up in some kind of trauma, addiction, abuse. That's just who seems to come. The secondly is they end up being healers of some sort, even though they might not recognize it at the time that we begin. But in some way, shape, or form, there's some gift and talent that they have that helps to uplift the planet. So what I told this person in the email, and what I tell my clients, is that we all have a role to play. So first of all, especially if you're highly sensitive, that there's going to be some grief. There's going to be grief, because anytime we see people that are suffering, or we see things in our planet that hurt, especially if you're highly sensitive, you're going to hurt as well. You have a heightened sensitivity to that, to Mother Earth. So to notice if you're feeling grief, don't think there's something wrong with you. Allow the grief, allow it to be there, but don't stop there. Meaning you allow it to be there, but use the other hand as well. And the other hand is, you know, the Course of Love says that you are an idea in the mind of God, and it is this idea you wish to express, and it is found at your source. And your source is in your heart. Literally, it is in your heart. So I tell my clients, I was telling this person, that it is our job now as a planet to get in touch with our heart. We've lived enough from our heads. You know, that the masculine doing mode is a thinking mode. It is the mind, and it has its place. But it was never meant to be the CEO. The heart, the feminine, the piece that brings wisdom, intuition, compassion, creativity, nurturing, that is where the call lies. So we listen to the heart first, and from there, once we feel an inspiration, then we bring the masculine mode in and we go and do the action. But you don't do the action first. If you're missing that heart piece, then we end up with people who are just out for power's sake. They're out to, like, you know, get something, versus inspiration is there to help bring harmony and love to the planet. So what I told her is you have to listen to your own heart. And make no mistake, we are not helping anyone by minimizing our joy. If I feel guilty for feeling joy, I'm not helping anyone, including the people that I feel like may be suffering. In fact, I'm not helping to raise any kind of vibration. My joy is what inspires me. And so when I meditate and I feel that unconditional love and I feel that peace and I'm listening to what would bring me joy, what I always ask every day, what direction would you have me go? Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? How would you have me see this day? And I listen to whatever comes in. Now, sometimes that is just, you know what? Enjoy yourself today. Just relax and enjoy yourself today. Appreciate, get outside and go for a walk today. That's like the directive, you know? Sometimes I'm expecting something big and sometimes it's something very small. But the point of it is, when I follow the inspiration, what I'm doing is I am opening my heart, and not to underestimate the power of the open heart, because it is not our words that are going to speak to people. It's not our words that are going to raise a vibration. It's the vibration that comes from the heart. And so I told her, listen to whatever your heart is calling you. If that, you know, I have one client who, she makes gorgeous jewelry. And in fact, she makes these they're like crystals.
Oh, beautiful.
And yeah, they're beautiful. And but the thing about it is she's thinking she's making jewelry. I put on these crystals and all of a sudden I can feel the healing energy that's in them. Yeah. And I told her that don't minimize what you do, because that's what oftentimes we'll look at somebody and we'll say, yeah, but they're doing this great, great thing in the world. And, you know, I'm just being nice to the store clerk, you know, but not to minimize, because wherever we are meant to spread love, that is how we are helping the planet. Yeah. It's not a comparison. You know, the Course of Love says there are two things you must remember. Resign as your own teacher and stop comparing. So that means listening to your, I know, isn't that great? I was like, oh, the two things, yeah, I got to keep going back to those, right? But to resign as your own teacher, which means don't judge. It's not your job to judge. It's your job to listen. And then stop comparing, because only you are going to reach and play the part that you are meant to play here.
Comparison is a killer.
Yeah.
I think it's terrible. I would love to see that just get wiped off the planet.
I know, right? Exactly. So that's kind of the directive that I'm sharing with them, is just to appreciate your gifts, because that's what brings you joy and what you feel maybe called to do, even for that day, because that's what you're meant to do for today. Yeah. That really is your part.
I love that, how you start the day. That's a beautiful way to start the day. It's very strong, actually.
Mm. Yeah, it's helpful.
Yes, I think a lot of people I'm talking with have a very strong practice at the very start of the day. Some people, including myself, do it while we're lying in bed after we wake up. Because often we wake up, you can wake up still feeling quite raw emotions, because all your filters and you're armoring down while you're sleeping. And so that stuff can come up as soon as you awake. So a lot of people I'm finding are actually either kind of praying to God or feeling embraced by golden light from God, or asking for the message for the day. You know, it's a beautiful practice to just let it kick in very quickly.
Oh my gosh, yes, yes. Where would we be without meditation? I do not know.
Yeah, it's been a gift to the planet. And you have written a book called Peace, Power and Miracles. But I'd just like to ask you about the free gift that you're offering the viewers, which is 7 days of 2-minute tools. Can you speak a little bit about that to the viewers before we finish?
Sure. Well, Peace, Power and Miracles is that it's under the whole premise that, you know, peace is the realm of miracles. I mean, the Course of Miracles and the Course of Love will both tell you peace is the realm of miracles. Yeah. So peace, to get back to our peace, our place of peace, is in fact to access that power within you. And from that power, miracles arise. I can only do so much on my own. But if I do it within the realm of connection to the power within me, you know, now I'm opening up miracles. So Peace, Power, and Miracles is how to get back into that place of peace. And there's the 3 awarenesses: the awareness of their thoughts, getting past your thoughts, clearing out the clutter there so you can be present. The awareness of the emotion, how to clear away when we have those uncomfortable emotions, how to really be with them in a compassionate way that heals and moves that energy. Yeah. You know, a lot of times we just want to run from it, but how can we actually be there with them, present with our emotions, with that higher power in there that heals it? And then the awareness of the heart is about how to receive and understand your guidance. Yeah. So these, the 7 days of these 2-minute tools, I call it the From Panic to Peace Challenge, because it only really takes a couple of minutes. As you said, the morning time, I highly recommend, but you can do it anytime, but highly in the morning is when we're most receptive. And they just take 2 minutes to entrain your brain to bring yourself back to a place of peace, back to a place of calm. And from there, we access a different mind. We access the higher mind, the one mind, the higher self. And our day can go very different. Yeah. So all it takes is, it takes a commitment, and it doesn't take much time, but you want to create that little time and space. And so the From Panic to Peace Challenge is, try this for 7 days. See what you notice. How do your days go different? And they're not difficult to do. They're just the little things, just like a little sprinkle of something in the morning that you can just try on. But I love them because you can pull them out of your back pocket at any time you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed and say, wait, I'm going to pull out that one tool. I really love that one. And so it gives you just a little, toolbox of these 7 tools to get back to that place of calm and peace where you can access your higher mind and your higher mind itself.
Wonderful. And I think everyone will be really interested. That's such a generous gift. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you so much for talking with me today. And if anyone wants to find you, they can find your website. The New Rays of Life is your business name. So people can find you if they look for Dawn Petalino, New Rays of Life. And
well, it would actually be just dawnpetalino.com. I made it simple. So yeah, so it's just www.dawnpetalino.com.
Yeah, and we'll have we'll keep all that information is on your opt-in page on as part of this masterclass series, so people will be able to track you down during this time as well, who want to follow up and connect with you. So I just want to thank you so much for speaking with us today. It's been wonderful, and for talking so deeply about your past and where it's brought you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate it, and I really, again, I give you so much kudos and credit to doing this, because I think our peace at this time in the world and on the planet is so important. So thank you.
Yeah, we can't have enough of these dialogues.
No, this is very true. They open hearts, and that's important.
Thank you.